Oh, record. We are now recording. What is that? Doesn't.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome, one and all.
The first episode of DM Live.
Do not start a party foul right when we
Right?
start
The
this.
immediately started just like the first.
The party foul. Got it. All right. So I am Alex, joining you from Homebrew Rules, starting our new series.
DM Lounge,
Got it.
where you'll have myself, Friendly Web, along with this beautiful person over here.
Alex, you can check me out. Angelus. Sometimes I do Magic the Gathering arena streams.
Mhm.
I haven't done that in like 5 years though.
Oh, nice. It's good start.
Yeah, but you can eventually find me there.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But we're going to be talking about different topics in a very casual sort of setting. We're going to be answering and talking with our viewers from time to time. Each episode is going to have a theme, motif that we're going to be going about, but we're going to be talking about a lot of different topics within that motif setting
Yeah,
for each
yeah.
episode.
The idea behind what we're doing here is like a more laid back kind of topic discussion between us who have, I think, at least I know I have like almost 15 years of DM experience. Not that I'm good at it, just experience.
Bad experience.
Actually, I think I'm one of the first.
You're the one who introduced me.
Yeah.
To DM.
I'm sorry about that.
I know it's been a bumpy ride ever since.
But the idea is that we're going to share our thoughts, our experiences around each topic, and we're going to try to tackle some topics that I think some other streamers do talk about, but we're going to go probably like the areas that they don't cover.
Yeah. Or even if we do go down the route they do cover, we're just going to give our own spin.
Yeah, our own fuck. We're going to disagree with everybody.
Yeah, pretty much.
Everybody. And because we're starting off our first stream, our first session, I think it's apt that we start off with the concept of session 0.
Yes, that is it's a good concept.
Right.
Not player creation, not how to do a session 0. It's the shit before that.
Yeah, like everything that comes about starting a game.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I actually never knew about a session 0 until probably maybe like 6 years ago. Session 0 wasn't a thing when like 3.5 was around.
That's a good point, because the first time I ever heard of a session 0 was when I started playing D&D online on like Roll20, and people were like, "Yeah, we got to do like a session 0 to like hash out what's here." I was like, "Huh, that's a good idea."
Like the idea, I think the concept has always been there. The naming probably wasn't, because when I first started gaming, like everybody was like, all right, cool, let's pick a day to create our characters and hang out with the DM and go over topics. But it never had a name, session 0.
Yeah.
It was just create your character and talk to the DM about what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Yeah. So, right?
Yeah, fuck, I don't even know.
But I agree. One of the issues that I have with session 0 is you're only going into character ideas instead of like the expectations for the game,
Yeah.
which is what really matters. I mean, you can make a character in a session, fantastic, but if the game ends in 3 sessions, who gives a fuck? Who cares about the session 0?
And I think that goes to one of, we have a whiteboard here with specific bullet points that me and him want to touch on. And it goes to one of my points is realistic expectations. When you start a game, realistically, none of the games you ever play are going to last past like 3 to 5 sessions.
I think it's like 80 to 90% of games that
Which
you
is
play.
a random number we're throwing out.
Yeah,
It doesn't
but
fucking exist.
to me, it makes sense because that's like the typical, but maybe other people are more lucky, I guess. You know,
Well, I
1% of the DN
Yeah, right, like that 1%ers. I think that we're probably one of the lucky few groups, because we've been running I've been running the session on Saturdays for close to 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, but the amount of players that I've dropped and been placed in.
Yeah, nobody wants to fucking play with me.
There it is.
So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like the game has had multiple players come in and out, life experience, and I think that goes to what we're just talking about the realistic expectations of making sure everybody picks a day that works for them, making sure that like there's some cohesion, and like making sure like nobody hates each other.
Man, it's hard to do all that in a session 0.
Yeah,
because like a lot of the times
because I don't
people,
like it.
I agree. I don't like myself. A lot of the times people will talk about a session 0, talk about a D&D, and say, yeah, I'm good to go, or yeah, I'll make time, or anything like that. In reality, they most likely can't make that time, or they're just saying it to play a few sessions and then, yeah, blow your load and I'm done.
Yeah,
It's difficult to expect people to like continue stuff like that, because it's like life. Shit can also happen too.
of course. But I think it's also about like finding the time to prioritize. Because like, if I want to go out on a Friday night and I really want to do that, like I'm going out on a Friday night. If I want to play D&D and I really want to play D&D, I'm gonna make the time for it, and I'm not gonna bullshit. Like, yeah, I'll be there at 7, and then I don't show up until 9:30. Like, why is everybody leaving?
Fair.
But that's, I think, goes to making sure you like the people you're with, because
Yeah.
from my perspective, it all comes down to that. Like, sure, the DM's like, hey, this is the game you're gonna play. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna be fucking space pirates, and you all can like have laser swords. But then you sit down to actually play the game, and your styles don't match up.
Yeah, I think that goes to one of my points: DM play styles and expectations.
Fucking check mark.
Oh, no, we haven't talked about it yet.
No. Check mark there.
Okay. We're starting to cover.
We're starting the conversation.
So, for example, players and DMs, whenever anybody they get into a game, they start preparing for a game, you're gonna have an expectation for every single player that's there, along with the DM and how the game is gonna go. Whether or not it's a realistic expectation is very key, because we all make an idea in our minds of how things are gonna.
Because every DM is Matt Mercer.
Every DM is a perfect DM,
and every player is a cast off of fucking Critical Role.
Yeah.
Which I've never seen, by the way.
Hey, what's up, John? Thank you.
Hey, what's up, John? Fuck you.
But
yeah, every player to the DM is a character off of Critical Role.
Yes.
And every DM is Matt Mercer, which obviously realistic, and everybody online tells you this, no, don't have these expectations. But I think coming down and like asking your DM, like in session 0, not just what the world is going to be about, but how do you run the game?
that's a double-edged sword,
Why?
because the DM does not truly know or like understand his play style, because he thinks of himself in a different way than it actually is. It's like a two-way mirror.
I guess.
Like you're gonna be like, yeah, I do this, but at certain points as a player, you're gonna be like, you don't do this, and you don't do this either.
Yeah, I've gotten that feedback before, where I'm like, yeah, I'm a really fucking amazing DM, and everybody's like, you're dog shit.
You're dog shit. I think that's what you're telling yourself.
Oh, probably.
You're definitely telling yourself in nightmares.
Yeah, fucking tossing and turning.
Oh
and...
my god, cat.
Oh shit, we have a cat.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that was my cat Morty.
Just pussy.
I definitely think that some DMs definitely know what it is they like about it. Like,
yes.
And I think even just that alone goes a long way. Because you have, for example, myself. I could only give you examples of myself. I know I hate fucking useless, boring combat.
I agree
And
entirely.
5e is probably one of the most hack and slash combats systems. Without the DM putting work into it and like, okay, now there's other elements outside of just I hit, you hit. Without the DM putting that work into it, I hate the combat.
You think 5e is more hack and slash than 3.5?
Yeah.
3.5 is so much more combat. With the 40 books of feet, 50 books of races,
Oh yeah.
the level adjustments and the crazy.
Those were game mechanics.
Yeah, but there's so much more combat mechanics in 3.5 that like add to the the -2, -5, -6, -7 to your extra attacks, especially when you're dual wielding. It's a nightmare.
I didn't say it was good. I didn't say that's the
It's not bad
mechanic.
though, but there's just so much more than 5e.
You're right. What I mean by 5e combat is that it's so simplistic. 5e combat is I hit, you hit. In 3.5, and I'm not saying that 3.5 was better by any means. I'm just saying that in 5e, it's like I stand next to you and somebody's behind you. That's advantage already, based on the rules alone.
Not 5e.
Yeah, 5e.
That's an optional flanking rule.
But most people use it.
Yeah.
I've seen most people use like now like a +1 or a +2 modifier, just because the math makes more sense
And a +5.
than a +5. But I'm just saying that there was something about combat in like even in other systems. I think like Pathfinder Second Edition, their action economy is completely different. Where it's just you have 3 actions and it could be move, attack, and do something else. Or move, and I don't know. It's just I like to set up combats that are meaningful, that have more than just kill the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like if it's just to kill the bad guy, like I lose interest as a DM.
Fair. So going into expectations, DM play style. I completely agree, and like the players along with the DM needs to understand each other's expectations in that session 0 or beforehand, because nobody understands, nobody talks about expectations. You get into session 0, everything's hunky dory because you're not playing yet. The first session, it's all right. Second session's all right. Third session's a little worse. Fourth session's even worse. Fifth session, you find reasons to not play anymore.
Yeah, fifth session, I got to do anything else but go to D&D, like
because it doesn't meet your expectations.
It doesn't. And I think that goes into another one of my topics, which is priorities. When that starts to happen, nobody tends to have a conversation.
Correct. Yes.
They just go.
It's the last thing they do.
Of course, it's like, oh, this isn't what I wanted, and immediately just. And I don't mean everybody. Like I've had some players come to me and be like, "Hey, look, I want more of combat, and I'm not getting it, or I want you to leave my backstory out of the game." And I'm like, I mean, sure, that's fine, but okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But I've also had players who don't show up anymore because, sorry, not what I'm looking for. I'm like, but I don't know what you're looking for.
What's you looking for? Oh, you can't read my mind?
Like,
expectations.
God damn it. Fucking expectations, bro. But it says a lot about being able to prioritize your game session and go, okay, I've scheduled this time. Something is not what I want it to be. Let me prioritize talking to the DM. Let me prioritize my time and make sure this is what I want from a game. Because in reality, like we said, most games don't continue.
Yeah. Past session 5, I would say most.
Bro, like it is surprising how many times I've tried to, because I'm a forever DM, so I've tried to sit down in a game to play, and I think I make it to session 4 or 5, and then something happens and the game falls apart, or the DM is dog shit, and I've tried to talk to the DM.
Why'd you point your hand at me when you did that? Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
Sorry. No, Tony. Remember Tony?
Yeah, I remember Tony.
Talk about dog shit.
It's so a DM like this individual is someone that never continues or never moves on. They have one play style, which is not necessarily bad, but I feel that the evolution of a DM is super important. And hey, sometimes we all do shit that's not good. We all do shit that's not great. But it's like that learning process where you're like, all right, let's evolve. Let's move forward.
And you know what? There's something to say about having like a particular play style, right? Like it's okay not to play with a group that doesn't meet the expectations you're looking for.
Yes.
If I'm a DM, like for example, I am a DM that loves story. I require my players to give me at least a paragraph of background. And that's minimum. Also, don't be a storied character and hand me like 10 pages of backstory where you killed a dragon and you're level 1. That also doesn't work. But I like some story because for me, I like to see the players in this world and acting out and making their decisions. So if you sit down and you're like, no, I don't want to make a backstory, I'm like, I don't want to play with you.
Yeah.
Like if you don't tell me what ties your character into this world, so I can build this world and have you play in it, I don't want to play with you.
That's fair. Yeah. Well, that goes into, see, when how my expectation for a player is, if you do not put enough effort into your character, then I feel that you in the session, your player attentiveness will be very, very low.
Oh, yeah.
You will not care about this player that you have no effort into. You're either there to swing, roll dice, or bullshit and not focus at all in the session.
Yeah, definitely. And it goes a long way. Like that player. Well, you know what? The player attentiveness could be a bunch of other stuff too, because we've had players in our game where, like Dylan, he fucking sat on his computer, played fucking whatever fighting game he was playing, and then it came around to his turn, and he's just like, oh. But I think it ties into what you said, because I think at the end of that, before we kicked him out, he was probably not interested in the game anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. He didn't talk. He didn't have good communication. But there was something about it that he started losing interest in the game, and his attentiveness went way down.
Yes.
And obviously, if people don't know, it's fucking disrespectful. Like
It is.
fucking,
And it's not to say that you have to be always constantly listening. It's to a degree. Like, hey, somebody else is doing something. You're not in the room. You're not doing anything. You're on your phone. Who cares?
Yeah.
Whatever. It's fine. But like, something big is happening. Something important is happening. Your character is a prevalent person in the decision making, and you're not paying attention. You're not doing anything. You don't care.
yeah.
It's disrespectful to the person who's making the story and giving their time to everyone else too.
I mean, let's be honest. I don't put any fucking effort into prepping for my games, but
Yeah, Mr. Note Taker that takes fucking 4 hours of notes every session. Yeah, my ass, you don't put effort into it.
I really do take so many notes. Fuck. But it definitely, you're absolutely right. I forgot what you were saying because I wasn't paying attention.
Exactly, yeah.
No, but it does go a long way to show some kind of courtesy, not just to the DM, but to the other players.
Yes.
If two players are having a moment or a scene or something, and it's okay for that to happen, and it may not include you, but showing attention to that like scene where two players might be interacting and sharing something goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that you are prioritizing the game and you're giving your attentiveness and setting expectations. Look at that, we're covering all the bullet points.
Covering all the bullet
Fucking
points.
all the bullet points, man. But I think that leads me into the dedication part.
Yes.
Which is part of priorities, to be honest.
But you can't have the dedication if it doesn't meet your expectations.
Agreed. All of this ties together.
Yes.
Like all of these little things, in my opinion, is what brings the whole thing together to have a lasting game.
Yes.
Because if your priorities aren't straight, if you don't set realistic expectations, or your play styles don't match, you're not gonna have a lasting game.
Yes.
Talk to your DM. Fucking, if you set a session 0, get the most out of that session 0. Sit down and be like, okay, what do you think about this? Like, how do you run this scenario? Do you have any homebrew rules? Clear that shit up before anything.
100%.
Bro, I've sat down with a DM who's like, yeah, homebrew rule, no healing.
Like, what? I'm doing a life cleric.
like, dude, you just fucking nerfed me.
Yeah.
Or I think one that I did was I was playing an Oath of Conquest Paladin. And then every combat we had, everybody was immune to fear.
That's fucked.
I'm like, I mean, also my fault for not talking to the DM and going, yo, this is what I intend to do. Are we doing like an undead heavy campaign?
Yeah.
Because we did. And that was my fault for like not making sure, because if not, I would have rolled like a fucking Oath Broken.
Yeah, whatever.
Which would have been way better with undead.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my fault. I still made it work, and I still had a great time. I killed Vecna, but it was... Well, actually, no, I killed Vecna with the stupidest item ever.
Yeah.
A Ring of Obscurity. Oh, shit, we have a dog in the
Oh, we got a dog.
Okay, sorry. Kaya, go. Sorry, the dog was having technical difficulties.
Yeah.
It was the Ring of Obscuring.
Okay.
And what it does is it creates a fog cloud around you.
Does it follow
And
you?
it follows you.
Okay.
And apparently Vecna's counterspells have to see you. And I was a paladin, so he couldn't counter my
That's funny. That's
but he
perfect.
highly like the DM, that was the DM's fault. He highly undervalued the spell Fog Cloud.
Yeah.
Because he didn't realize
It creates heavy obscurity.
which is, by the way, heavy obscurity from Fog Cloud is one of the strangest rulings ever. But that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
But I didn't talk to my DM, and I didn't say, hey, I want to play a paladin who leans heavy on this fear mechanic. Am I going to get fucked?
Mhm.
But, part of my dedication to the game is I wanted to play. I liked the DM, and I liked some of the people I was playing. Some of the people.
Yeah.
I like them all. They're all good in their own right. But that's what it goes to show. And I've had players come to me and be like, this is what I want to play. And I'm like, okay, I make it work for the game, or I let them know, like, okay, no, that's not going to work because that's not the type of game we're running. I think somebody wanted to play in the Saturday group. There's this thing where Raise Dead and like
Resurrection and all that stuff.
that
not
doesn't
working.
work.
Yeah.
Except for Revivify. And somebody wanted to play a fucking cleric that brings people back from the dead all the time. I'm like, unfortunately, part of the game world, this doesn't work. Not as a mechanic, but as a story element.
Yeah.
Because as a mechanic, that would suck.
It would. So one of my favorite homebrew rules that we have
Yeah, I love it.
is when a person dies, like fully dead, and they're resurrected or anything like that, they gain a permanent death save.
Yeah.
Which it gives more emphasis on dying has consequences.
I think this is and a little off topic from like whatever we're talking about, but definitely something that I've seen a lot of people discuss with making the world real and having death have meaning. With so much access to healing magic and Revivify, I think being like the worst offender.
It's a level 3 spell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's 1 minute to cast, but in combat it's the most like potent time to cast it.
No. It's an action to cast.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You can only do it on a person that hasn't been done for longer than a minute.
So combat is what I meant, like a minute of combat. But this whole concept of bringing people back from the dead is something people are always talking about. And I think something that stuck with me when I was listening to, I think, the Dungeon Coach, one of my really cool guy I was listening to, probably has no idea who the fuck I am, but as a DM, you control what the players have access to.
Of course.
And so, like, before they're level 5, or before they can get access to 5th level, like, Raised Dead, you can make it as hard as you want to come across. Like,
Well, not for a cleric, though. They know all the spells.
sure, but before level 5, before they get access to level 5 spells. Raised Dead is a level 5 spell.
Oh, yes.
So before they get access to level 5 spells, which would be, what, level 7, I think?
I believe it's 9.
No.
Because 5 is 3.
Oh, 5 is
7
3.
is 4.
Yeah.
9
It's
is...
half.
yeah.
So before they get to level 9, like, which is, let's be honest, a long time in D&D games nowadays.
Yeah.
Raised Dead could be as fucking sacred as you want it to be. Granted, obviously there are ways that people get around that in the game.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you're the DM, and
DM, you're the god of the world. Yeah.
I don't like that because, like, I like players to have an impact on the world.
Sure, but you if you want to limit something or do something in that regard with your DM playstyle, I wouldn't say like, oh, just limit them and tell them to go fuck themselves, but like have some sort of story implementation as to why this might not be a good idea. For example, a cleric, depending on their god, they might not like people being raised from the dead because it goes against the natural
Absolutely.
order of things.
Yeah. It was
Something that's dead should stay dead.
Chris from our Seclusa game, he was playing a Grave Cleric of the Raven Queen, and he purposely didn't take any resurrection spells because of that particular reason. Raven Queen doesn't want that. And I love those kind of story tie-ins where the player is willing to understand, like, hey, this is a story element that I brought into the game. and me as a DM who loves story elements, that's what I bite on. I love those kind of things. Min-maxing, I'm okay with min-maxing as long as I have a story for your character and you want to be part of the world. I have a guy on Wednesday who's like, yeah, here's my backstory. I don't really want you to use any of it. Please don't bring anybody back from the dead because they're all dead and buried. I'm like,
okay. He just wants to roll dice.
He's an older gentleman, and what he wants to do is he wants to just sit back and let the party do what they want to do, and then like walk around with them and see what their actions are. So, which is why he was like, "Hey, don't bring my story into it." But me, I want to bring your story into it. That's part of my play style.
Yeah.
I love to have a little bit of everybody's backstory incorporated into the game because for me, that's one of my hooks. I like to hook players with reasons for doing things.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, I've never been a fan of, we're all sitting at the table to play a game, so you should know to follow the story hook.
Yes. That is, it's boring to a point.
Agreed.
As a player, you should have some common decency to know that I will not be separating from the party. You can separate from the party, but I will not be purposely separating from the party every single time just because I feel like my left nut got like a breeze in the face.
Yeah.
And fuck the party. I'm here to play I'm here to do whatever the fuck I want. There's a level of decency in D&D where, hey, you know what? We're still playing a game. We don't have a lot of time. We have typically 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
Let's
unless you're us.
fair, but let's enjoy ourselves as a party and let's like try to make like a nice fun story.
Yeah.
To a degree.
I don't know. Like, this is one of those topics where I'm like 50-50 on because I got spoiled when I first got into D&D and I was playing with my all-time favorite DM, Darren, who was like, do whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. No holds bar. People were coming in with level 8 adjustments gone. And like, if nobody knows what a level 8 adjustment is, it's when you lose 8 levels just to play this class or race.
Yeah, usually race.
It could be it's mostly a race. You're right.
Yeah, because it's like a demon or like a succubus or something like that, and they gain abilities for those levels that you missed.
The thing that sets you off is sometimes they don't get hit dice.
Yes, sometimes.
So you have like a level 8 character, but you have 1 hit die.
Yeah, it's like, ooh.
And you're like, I got 8 hit points, but I can cast Wish. But he was letting people come in with no level adjustments and all that. And it was crazy because I didn't understand level adjustments or whatever, but his play style spoke to me. It was, I want to tell a great story with all these different elements based on the players.
Okay.
And he took elements from each player and he's like, but I need a backstory. And that's where I got that from. He's like, I need a backstory because he would take the world that he had
and then
fit the backstories into the world.
Got it.
And it was so beautiful and like elegant, and he was a great storyteller. He did have his faults here and there because he let some players run rampant, which back then, like player bullying
in 3.5 was very, very prevalent.
And we didn't know that it was a thing, but it would happen when people would power game, and then you would come in and be like, I want to play this human who's like searching for his dad, but this guy's like playing a succubus demon with like whatever variations, and he's like, do what I say, I'm gonna kill you. And you're like, huh.
Guess I'm gonna do it because he rolled a 40 versus my 12. Like, sure.
And then that leads us back into like the player on player meshing styles.
Yeah.
Where you're gonna lose that player focus, player attentiveness, dedication if you're not enjoying the play styles of the other players.
Correct. Yes. It's because that goes to the DM to player expectations. If the DM is going in thinking that everyone's going to be playing in a certain style or wanting people to play in a certain style, and fucking the majority of them or like a few of them aren't doing it, then it's like, I don't really like telling this story to people that either don't care or are not meeting my expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I had a player once come into my Wednesday campaign. She knew one of the players from our Cyclusa game.
Mm-hmm.
She knew, Matt.
No.
Yeah. I didn't want to say her name on stream. I don't know if she's comfortable with it, but she knew Natalie, and Natalie invited her to come play. And I like to ask some probing questions just to get a gauge of where these players are at. How much handhold, like, do you need a like plot armor for the first few levels, or can I let you go and you know what you're doing? And she's like, no, I've played games before. I know everything about D&D. And I was like, wow, that's fucking great. What are you playing? I'm like, an Eric. She's like, an Aarakocra, like warlock, sorcerer, whatever. I'm like, sounds cool, whatever. I don't fucking care. And the first time she played, she's like, so I want to like kill that guy. And like some random ass shit like that weren't like in the rules. I'm not super rules heavy, but like, why do you want to, like, I need story. Like, why do you want to kill him? No, I just don't like his face.
Huh.
Okay. Okay, what do you got that's going to kill him? Oh, I don't know. You tell me how I kill him. I'm like, okay, obviously you don't know what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah, you have no fucking idea.
And if you would have sat down and talked to me about the kind of character, I am one of the few DMs that'll tell you I'm okay with players playing evil characters. I don't give a fuck.
I think to a degree. I think everything has a balance.
No, I don't care.
Okay.
No, I don't care.
I disagree. But that doesn't mean we can't continue.
No, we can't. We have to stay on this topic.
Oh, we have to stay on this topic.
Yeah. No. Obviously, everything has boundaries, right? If you're going to be a player who goes around and says, I'm evil, so I get to kill everything in my way, then that's not going to work. It's boring. It's not just boring, it's disruptive. Because, like, obviously,
actually.
Like, it's disruptive to other players who don't want that kind of game. And it's like, you're just like, oh, we're talking to the baker, and you just go, stab. And everybody's
Would you guys like some fresh bread that I just...
And you're like...
But if the reasoning was, I like blood-flavored bread, then I'd be like... Fair, that kind of makes a little sense.
No, man.
Anyways.
I'm okay with evil characters with purpose.
Yes, purpose is...
And I think that really defines a line between what is an allowable character and what is not. Because even a good, like if you're like, hey, I'm going to play Johnny Bravo, and I don't want to do anything but hit on women, not adventure, not do anything.
No, a bard. So just a bard.
Well, no, like a bard, but you went like warrior.
Yeah. Okay.
Like you're not even a bard. You're just a warrior.
Paladin.
Okay. So okay.
That could work.
That could work. But like you're like, I don't want to play anything. I don't have a backstory. I just want to stay in town and flirt with everybody. Like, cool. You can do that. Now, what is your other character want to do?
That's not a character.
That's not a character.
You're an NPC.
Pretty much. And we'll talk to your NPC all the time.
Sure, wonderful.
But I don't think the alignment matters as much as the reason behind your character.
Yes, I agree. That I agree. The alignment, any alignment could be a good character.
Which, to be honest, alignment in 5e doesn't fucking matter anyway.
Really?
Alignment's a spectrum now. And I say spectrum because it's very true. Like you can have moments where your character is like super like neutral,
yeah. or even good,
and then like there are moments where you're just like, actually, I'm gonna be really selfish and like evil here and hide while you kill that child, and that's okay. That's what I mean. Alignment is a spectrum in D&D. I think that Dungeons and Dragons over the years has become more like less rigid. Actually, like it's become less rigid about alignment and like what kind of character, because they have all these little boxes that you had to be in back then. And
yeah, I mean D&D in the past was you're either this way or you're not, or you don't fit the system. But it's more. It makes for a better story where you can be a little more looser with the characters and your setting and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think 5e has brought that to the foreground where it's like we forego the alignment system and we just focus on the person, which is great because I love story. So I would love to see a paladin who falls from grace and then like has a redemption arc and then falls again and then, becomes an evil paladin.
Sure, Oathbreaker.
Looking at you, Natalie.
Yeah, Dark Paladin.
She's an evil paladin. In my Wednesday game, she doesn't know it yet, but she's an evil paladin.
Got it.
Yeah. Oathbreaker, Oath of Conquest are great. Like, back then in 3.5, you had to be a lawful good paladin in 5e you don't.
You can pretty. I
You
mean,
can be an evil
what I
paladin.
like about paladins is that they don't really need a god.
No,
They can get the powers from themselves. They
Yeah.
can be their own person.
they get their
way.
power from their tenets and their cause.
Yeah.
So like Oath of Devotion is like my power comes from my devotion to whoever the fuck I'm devoting to.
Yeah.
And Oath of Conquest, I love the concept of Oath of Conquest. I'm here to rule with an iron fist. So all that stuff. But all of this just ties into the player expectations,
Yes.
play styles, and
DM expectations.
yeah. And honestly, for you DMs out there, like, there's nothing wrong with having like a little questionnaire and like giving it to your players at session 0 and going, answer these questions for me.
I think in order to get a full gauge on the people you're about to try this campaign with, what you should do is a one shot with every single player that wants to play. And it could be, I wouldn't say module. It could be a module. Why the fuck not?
Yeah,
A module that you do whatever you want with.
Modules get such bad raps nowadays.
They do because they're just linear, but that's the whole point of a module. It's supposed to be linear. But they're like, it's linear in D&D. It's like, that's the point.
I think people confuse linear with railroading
Yes,
a lot, and that could be a whole other video that we touch on.
it will be.
It-
On episode 4,
I like it.
railroading versus linear.
But as a player, I'm so used to playing in a sandbox kind of open world game where I have the ability to like fuck the storyline. Like, this sounds really cool.
Mhm.
And I've been fortunate enough to play with DMs who are like, yeah, that sounds cool. Yeah, and go do that.
That right there, what you just said, is what makes, I think, a child DM versus like an adult DM. It's the bar between like the two leagues of DMs where a good DM can look at their story and go, you know what the player suggested or what their idea does makes my story better than going, my story's the best, no matter what anyone says.
Oh my God.
My story will always be better, and nothing's going to change it because I have the best writing, or I can think, no,
That's
your story is probably dog shit.
you cannot outthink the 4 or 5 other people at your table.
No,
They're
absolutely
going
not.
to come up with so much better ideas or solutions to things that you never even thought
of
about.
course.
Because that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But talking about DM expectations, it's like you cannot be a rigid DM and go, this is the story I've created, and it goes from point A to point Z. And then when a player says, hey, what's that tower you said that was off in the distance when you were just describing a narrative? And, they go, and everybody in the party goes, we're going to go check out that tower. And you as a DM go, no,
Yeah. Oh, you check it out.
nothing's there.
You looked in, it was empty, nothing happened. It's like,
And I have another DM friend that like I had the same conversation with. He goes, sometimes it is just nothing.
yes, that's fair. Sometimes it doesn't always have to be.
It doesn't always. And for me, like, it's hard because it's something I struggle with. Like as a DM, is like it doesn't always have to be something, but I always want to reward my players for like doing something that I didn't think of or coming. And I have a hard time being like, no, yeah, this is absolutely totally nothing.
For me, whenever I DM, I think it really depends on the attentiveness and the drive of the players when they discover something that I didn't think of. If it's a party of 4 and 3 out of the 4 players don't give a shit or don't care about the one thing that's said or brought up, but one person is like, you know what, I'll check it out. I'm not going to give it as much emphasis to like make something cool or anything like that. But if the party are like, wait a minute, what if it ties in with this? What if it does this? You know what? We're going to investigate this and we're going to really look into it. I'll be like, you know what? Because you guys are so enthralled and wanting to be this something to
Yeah.
me, I will make it that something. But if there's no attentiveness or want from the players, I'm not going to put as much emphasis unless there's a really good reason that I can think of.
I would make it that something with a twist, obviously. It's like it's not going to be exactly what they
Of course,
think, because
of course.
that would be fun.
But it goes from it meaning nothing to now you guys want it to be something, and because you guys want it to be, I want it to be something
Yeah.
because you're the story makers.
I think DMs I think are the ones who need to be the most malleable with their play style and knowing that. Because if you sit down at a table and go, I am, and which is okay to be a combat versus a DM versus player DM. Some people like that kind of shit. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
I'm not a big fan, but I know some players who are ready to fucking rules lawyer with the DM and be like, ha, I beat you. Not my kind of game, but hey. But if you want to play for a variety of, I think DMs need to be the most malleable to go, okay, this is my play style where I create a story, but I need to know when and where to give and how to change my play style up to make somebody happy for combat.
Yes.
Because it's going to happen. You have more people than you have DMs, unless you watch our Seclusa game, and then you have 2 DMs for all the people. But you have to be able to go, okay, I'm going to feed him what he wants. I may not be a combat-oriented DM, but I want to cater to everybody's play style. And I think that I'm being very general when I say combat as a DM style, because I think DM styles have a very wide range.
Very wide range.
Like, besides just like DM versus player, you have storied DMs. Mm-hmm. You have mechanic focused DMs. I think like you're very mechanic focused.
So previously, especially when I first started, I loved the idea of the mechanics because it's so cool to learn something and like learn the system and work within the system. But as time went on, going through that West March for fucking years and like really just hammering in the system and really like understanding the system, how wrong I was a lot of the times, how like it's not good to be super gritty with players just because they're not fully familiar with the system. It's not for me. I grew out of that player versus the DM versus player play style, but I still love the system and its grittiness and that idea of not giving players overpoweredness, but making what they have in the system super important and going, hey, look, you might not have these crazy overpowered things, but there's so many things in the system that you can work with that makes you super versatile within the system without needing to break out of the system.
Yeah. And I think you're witnessing one of my biggest flaws as a DM when I when I first started off that Saturday game is like I loved the idea of high fantasy, high power, but I didn't realize the implications it would have on the game and setting up the game in the future as players leveled up.
Yeah.
So now we're at level 17, and players can easily take down a CR 25.
Yeah.
With like just straight out of the book. Like
yeah.
I can hand when your character Sinbad a CR 25 and he'll probably down it if it doesn't have resistance to necrotic. In like what, a few rounds?
And that's strictly with just the book.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah. No like adjusting. I adjust a lot of my monsters as do most DMs nowadays.
Yeah, no, but even my character is just book. There's
no
homebrew stuff.
You have the feat that's homebrewed.
Oh yeah, the transformation. No, but even without the transformation thing, that character can most likely take out.
Oh yeah, but that's fair.
And that's going to min-maxing. No, yeah. Min-maxing's.
But your character is also
super.
But I love your character just because you are min-maxed, but you don't like use it all the time.
No,
it's one of those. Is like I can body you. But I don't want to.
My character's illiterate. He's not that smart. He's like not the brightest tool in the shed, but it's like, sure, you can kill someone in combat, but it's not.
You can point the cannon somewhere and shoot it.
Yeah.
But if nobody's there to point the cannon, it's not going to shoot.
No.
But that was one of my flaws as a DM. Like I love high-powered, high fantasy. Dylan's character was one of those mistakes that I made. It's like I did this thing from 3.5 was like, at every ASI, you also got a feat.
Yes, you would give both.
I give both. I give a level 1 feat, and then at every ASI, I give a feat. And it was only because I liked the idea of strong
high
power, because I love to see the players become like epic fucking whatever. Like they don't have to be heroes, but I love to see them become epic.
Yeah.
But the game wasn't designed for that.
No, but the issue is they don't become epic. They start as epic. And your combat, in order to fight off the epic and give the players a challenge, they have to almost die every combat.
Yeah.
Which is it creates this every single combat. It feels like there's a type where you're being choked because it's like I could die if I fuck up the next round.
Yeah.
So it's like, fuck, it's hard. It's a hard balance.
It is a hard, and it was one of those learning things for me. I was coming in DMing 5 years ago from not DMing anything for like a few years.
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, I could totally fucking DM. And in my Wednesday game, they all stole a bunch of fucking shit off a boat. And in my head, I wasn't expecting them to do that, but the boat had a bunch of merchandise and spell components and gold.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but they got it. And so now they're all rich as fuck. And these are all things I learned to adjust as a DM and to lower my expectations or raise my expectations and change my play style a lot. Because now when I play again, I may not do the feat ASI thing, or I may do it, but I may do it sparingly, like maybe at every 8 levels, because now I know better.
Yeah.
And now I know what I want from players and what I don't want from players. And I think one of the most important things as we wrap up here in a little bit is making sure you don't sit at a table just because you want to play and play with a bunch of fucking assholes.
Yes. That goes to either player to DM expectations or player to player expectations or DM or whatever, player to DM.
Yeah, yeah. All of that shit, like, if you hash it out at the beginning, like I said, DMs, don't be afraid to fucking question your players to get insight of their playstyle. And you know what? I think we haven't defined playstyle. We've just said it, but I don't think anybody's defined what playstyle really means. What would playstyle mean to you?
A DM playstyle, a player playstyle, or
just the term playstyle. We're throwing it around, and I think a lot of people on the internet throw the word playstyle around, but we haven't really defined it.
A playstyle is how you or your how you as a player approach a scenario every time, or or most of the time. That could be depending on that could be a factor of like the environment that you're currently in or the players that you're currently playing with. Because, for example, I have different play styles. I know a lot of people have different play styles depending on the party. So if you are going to be doing certain stuff like this, your play style may differ because you might be playing a different character, might be playing in a different setting, or be playing with a different DM. For example, when I play as a player with a DM that has very little experience, my play style is not the same as a veteran DM.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because I expect them to have to know and do certain things that a veteran DM would understand. Like, I would expect them to be maybe a little more loosey-goosey with the way that you can approach things instead of a newer DM whose pretty much playstyle is based off of a module.
Yeah.
They have an idea, this is the story. A veteran DM, not all of them, some of them feel
the ones who've learned. The ones who've watched our channel.
Exactly. Because you can only watch. You can
only grow from watching our channel. Yeah. For me, I think that changing your playstyle comes with experience and time. But for me, the most part, I think people's playstyle remain the same throughout games. It's the way you approach the game from a meta, like from outside of your character.
Okay.
That's what playstyle to me is. Like, do I come to the table to sit down and like tell a story for my character? Am I coming to the table because I just want to fucking hit things and I want to rules lawyer everything? And obviously there's a bunch of different variations of this, but that's what to me playstyle is. From a meta perspective, what it means to sit down at the table and how you are going to run your character through the game. Are you the type of person who questions every little thing the DM says? The DM may have told you, hey, there's nothing you find here, but I'm going to check for secret passages anyway.
It's fair. But for example, there are some DM playstyles that will say that in hopes of you checking, even though they say that. But some, like, hey, you didn't find anything, or hey, you currently can't see anything, or you didn't find it, or like Your player,
yeah.
as of right now, you're not able to see anything. But like that verbiage
Yeah.
can be said in like and taken in a different way.
100%. And I tend to try to avoid that. So what I'll do is like I'll say, hey, there's no role like if I didn't plan for like a secret entrance, I'll be like, hey, there's no role necessary. You spend an hour, you don't find any secret entrances. Because I'm not going to waste a player's time or the group's time if that's not something I had planned.
Fair.
Again, that does go into maybe I didn't set up the encounter to have a secret entrance and I didn't even think about it. And then one of the players like, hey, I'd like to see if there's a secret entrance. I might then just be like, yeah, give me an investigation check.
I've had instances like that where the party will go through a mansion or whatever, or a dungeon, and they'll start talking with each other. What if this guy had like experiments or like something like that, and whatever. I'm like, maybe he did.
Maybe he did. You know what? Like, what was the investigation? And like, you get down there and like, what was he experimenting on? And like, just a bunch of clones of you, and you're like, I'd expect that shit. Okay. And I think that goes to what we're talking about, like DMs having to be the most malleable with their playstyle.
Yes.
If you want to play with a variety of different people. Now, obviously, there are going to be a bunch of people you don't want at your table, or you don't want to play with. Like, for example, like I said, I don't want to play with the character who's not invested in the world.
Yes.
Like, that's just not me. There are some people who don't want to have any ties coming into the game, and they want to build their ties to the game as they play.
And that's fine.
It is. It's not for me.
Okay.
Because, again,
I wouldn't meet your DM to player expectation.
It would not. And I've told people that. I'm like, hey, look, I really would like some sort of backstory, because that's how I get excited. I get, as a DM, excited about your character.
Yeah.
In the world. That's what I love about the game. I think I was talking to the other Chris about this, like, where he was like, oh, you need to be a certain kind of DM to like play with this kind of group because they're all chaotic in nature. And I'm like, maybe. And that's his play style. Like, he may like to play with a group of people who expect a story and follow this linear storyline.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, fucking don't give a shit. You play with me. Like you're like, I don't want to do that. I want to go over there. And I'm like, sure. What do you find over there? You find a baby Tarrasque.
Like, ooh.
Huh.
Cool.
Yeah.
Make him a blood Tarrasque.
But that's my kind of play style. Like, I thrive in my play style. I come to the game to sit down to create this world and see how the players will affect it and how the world reacts to the players in it.
Fair, yes.
And that's where me and Chris differ with being able to deal with. So Chris and I, different Chris, the one from the Sec Lucia game, we alternate on Wednesdays playing did alternate Wednesdays playing and DMing, and we run for the same people. And he has got to an issue where like his play style didn't match the play styles of the players because they didn't have that conversation. He went into playing for them without really talking about what kind of game do you guys play. Not what kind of games you want to run. What kind of games do you guys play?
Yeah.
And I come into the game and I'm like, what the fuck do you guys want to do? Cool, you want to be a what pirate? Yeah, all right, cool. Paladin? Cool, Death Paladin, got it. And I just sit back and I let the players explore the world, and then when they do something that's interesting, it bites me in the ass. Hard.
Really?
All the time.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about it.
Okay.
Like, I came up with that boat where they're like supposed to like escorted, whatever.
Yeah, and they make a shitload of money, and now money's no longer a thing.
Yeah, and like I'm sitting here going like, that's not something I thought would happen.
Yeah, and it sucks because especially when you drive yourself into a corner as a DM, it's hard to not feel like an ass if you immediately take it away or you remove the fruits of the player's ingenuity, like the fruits of their labor. Like they thought of this, they did this, and it's not to outsmart the DM or anything like that, but it's that, oh, you guys did something really, really good, really, really beneficial. you did great, but now the DM's like, fuck, how do I answer this? And it's not, the point is not to just take it away.
No,
that's
absolutely not.
Who
I
wants
think
to get their shit moved?
I think that would go into like a bad like.
It builds an animosity.
Yeah, absolutely, and like that would be a shitty like play style for the DM, and players would just feel shitty about that.
Of course.
And so I didn't take it away from them. I just turned it around. I'm like, okay, so now you're rich. Now people know you got money. Why? Obviously,
back to expectations. So
well, I was leading into the tone of the game, but
yeah, the tone and seriousness I think is super important for games, because some people like the idea of high power, less seriousness, more like anime kind of style, where it's just like everything's gonna eventually work out, everything's gonna be good. But some people don't like that. Some people like that super gritty, super serious kind of stuff. And it's finding that tone or that like the expectation for your game, because it's really, really important for your players and the DM.
I think that there is a hidden element. I don't know what it is, but there is a hidden element that keeps a group that lasts for a long time together, and can bring different play styles together.
Yeah.
Because I know that I have a group that has, like on the Saturday games, like there's a bunch of different play styles. You playing like the min-max, and like seeing what you could do within the rules, and then you had like the other chaotic person who's like, I'm gonna go around and like fuck off and not do the story, because that's what he thinks the story is. He thinks the story is for him to run around and do whatever. And then you had like Natalie, who's just like, I'm gonna like follow that guy over there, and you have all these different elements playing at the table. There's something I don't know what it is. I wish I could tell you guys. I don't know what the secret is, but there is something that can bring different play styles together and keep them cohesive.
Yes.
I think it might just be like, not to toot my own horn or anything, but like the DM. I think that can bring different play styles together and make it work.
I think it's a mixture of the DM along with the players. I believe that every group needs to have, whether or not that's the DM or a player, a person that doesn't necessarily need to be the face of the party, but somebody that brings the people together and is like, hey guys, you ready for D&D? Hey guys,
the hype man of D&D,
the hype man, the charismatic person in the group. Because if you have 4 assholes with a cool DM, the players themselves don't mesh well.
Yeah,
you need that natural flow within the players, so they can, even if they don't agree every time, just to mesh well.
Yeah. And in closing of all of this, like the tonality sets the whole game.
Yes.
Because if the tonality of whatever game you're going to run doesn't fit your expectations, none of this is going to happen.
Yes. You're not going to have any dedication. You're not going to set priorities. The realistic expectations are gone.
Yeah, because you didn't set them.
Exactly.
Fucking, you didn't set them. You just sat down and you're like, the tone of the game fucking is all fucking anime style, and I came here for a fucking serious like character expo.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen.
Well, to go into expectations for players that you brought up a little while ago, the expectations for like backstories and how attentive they are in the world. For example, you like a character that has backstory and already ties to the world when they enter. I, for example, don't mind too much, so long as when ties are brought into the world for their character, not necessarily have to do with backstories, they go with it. They go with the flow, and they're like, you know what? I'm in it. I'm in it because a character that has no ties or doesn't care that much and is shown a tie and doesn't care, at that point, I feel is not even playing that character. They're playing a
shell.
A shell. A shell. They're playing Link. They're there to swing a sword, throw a bomb, and save the princess. Like, who gives a fuck? And nothing wrong with Link. That character is there for a reason.
Yeah,
it's made so we can
fill the shell. Yeah, and like, you know, fill out our fantasy game.
But in the D&D, so for example, for the Wednesday group, I have the majority of new players. they're not going to be coming up with like these intricate backstories or anything like that because they're just not used to it, or they don't expect to be like that invested into it until they start playing. Then they're like, whoa, wait a minute, I like this character a lot more. So they didn't come with that expectation of going, I'm going to invest a lot of time into like making this character because I don't know what D&D is.
For me, I think, and I hate
the point that I'm trying to make with you better.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, but so they came into the campaign with a lot of expectations to be super invested in the characters. It's one of their first ones. So when bringing in elements of story into their characters and then rolling with it, going, oh my god, this is awesome. For example, a player is a life cleric, and I gave them an item because of something they did really, really cool in RP. It was a staff of healing, which is a rare item. It's a very powerful item for level 3. However, whenever they use the item, something occurs to them. It hasn't happened yet, but the item has not a negative effect because it's not negative as of yet, but to their mind, possibly negative. And even the person that they're aligned with, the god, is like, something's wrong. So the character did detect magic, and they saw themselves in a mirror passing by. They saw they had divination and necromancy within themselves because of the staff.
Oh, that's fucking cool.
So it's like, but now that character's like, holy shit, I'm really invested into it. What's this staff? What's with the god? Why is he saying no? Who got this staff? What's the curse? And it's like that element. It had nothing to do with their backstory, but it's like that willingness to dive into that fucking, just because they had
absolutely. I'm always like on the fence about this because I have this conversation a lot with other DMs and other players about the idea of you come to the table to sit down and play a game. You should know that you're going to play in this story and stick with the party. And like, I have a rough time with that because I'm here to play a character, yes. And I know that it's a group game and we're going to play in a group, but why can't I at times, and I'm not saying that some DMs don't do this, but there are some DMs who don't allow it altogether, breaking off from the party. Hey, I'm going to go take care of something. I'll be back in 2 sessions. And then like having side fucking...
I don't mind that, and I think that is amazing. However, where I think it becomes an issue is where you're taking the session with everyone and using the private time. What that should be is, hey, I'm gonna go do something. Fuck off, and you do something with the DM in a private, in your own private time, and you don't mess with the limited amount of time you have on a weekly basis. Because my issue with that is when you split up from the party, you take 3 hours out of the session for yourself when there's 4 other people sitting at the table and going, what the fuck, man?
And over the years, I think that was one of my like shitty things to do is like at the table I would sit down and be like, okay, and I get invested in this one player who broke off from the party, and then like an hour into it, I'm like, oh wait, I have 4 other people who need my attention. And it's, I love to dedicate that time, but knowing when to do that is important too. Hey, look, if you're gonna have a 30-minute off thing, sure, fine. But I've learned over the years, okay, like you're gonna go off and do what? Okay, so like with Diego on Saturday, when he would run off and be like, hey, I'm gonna go leave here, go to another city and investigate that area, I'd be like, that's gonna take time. And I do that like more now. It's like, so that's gonna take what, a week? You got to get there, you got to investigate, you got to get some food, sleep. Yeah, so if you want, I'll Discord you or whatever.
Exactly.
And then you can go home. And you can go home. I'm not faulting you, but you're not going to take up the time from everybody else at the table.
I think that's super important to do when you have those. It's not to go, fuck you, spray bad.
But some DMs do that too. Like, they'll be like, you want to separate from the party? No.
Yeah, it's terrible.
You should know that you're playing with a group. Like, I come from a generation, like I'm saying this like I'm fucking 80 years old, but I come from a time of playing
D&D. You take your Alzheimer's medicine, man?
Huh? Who are you?
Get out of my house.
It's your house? I'm sorry. I come from a time of D&D where it's like it was okay to do that. It was okay to have side sessions and all that shit. And the biggest thing was player motives.
Yeah.
Like why are you playing this character? Some DMs nowadays are like, oh, you should just want to adventure for goals, for treasure. I hate that. Like
it's lazy.
It's lazy. It's like there could be more to your character. I want ethos, pathos. Give me some fucking story.
Yeah.
And I come to the game to sit down and like I tend to come with a rich backstory. It's like this is my backstory of my long lost brother who was a twin, and you do whatever the fuck you want, but I'm playing a character who has a purpose.
Yes.
I'm gonna play your story because it's your story. And I think this is one of my faults as a player is I don't talk to my DM about the expectations of what my story will be in the game and how prevalent it will be.
That's fair. That's a good thing to talk with your DMs.
100%. Because as a player who loves to see a story play out, I need to do more of that. I don't ever plug and play anymore, but it's definitely something. If you come to the game and you're like, hey, this is my story, and then you walk away
and you expect them to think how that's going to implement.
Yeah.
Some DMs will be like, okay, cool, it happened in the past. It has nothing to do with my story.
Nothing to do. This is 20 years later.
Yeah.
Goodbye. And I think that's a problem that we have. That's the opposite effect of the non-storied character. You just have this character who's like expects the DM to take the story and then weave it in, and then you sit down and expect, okay, like when's my story coming in?
Yeah. Or when you have that kind of story and the DM, you expect the DM to treat it like gospel.
Yes.
Nothing can change. Everything exactly like it is.
Oh my God.
There's no twists. There's no turns. This is how I expect it. No, fuck you.
It's like you turn their brother into their sister, and you're like, I don't have a sister, and you're like,
no. Subsection 4, paragraph 7,
like,
number page 74. That's
like,
not what I wrote.
I think to some extent there is like an unwritten rule from players and DMs. Like the player has the right to fuck with your backstory as much as
The
you
DMs have
want.
the right to fuck with you.
No, the players.
Okay.
No, the DM has the right to fuck with your backstory as often and as much as they want.
I think to a degree. I think everything has a limit. Because
everything has limits.
If you're expecting to do this in your backstory, and you're not expecting to it's constant just fucking twists and turns and just constant this like it's like
a roller coaster ride of emotions that you weren't ready for and a downward spiral of depression.
Yeah, it's like maybe I just want like a typical kind of twist and not just like fucking non-stop twists and turns where everyone's backstabbing each other. It's like,
and that just goes to like your expectations of and play style.
Yes.
Some players want a story for their character, but they want it to be resolved in like one session and have nothing to do with the main arc.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I don't. As a player, I want to be the star. I want to be the center of attention, and I want my backstory to be the story arc of the campaign. It's true. It's true. That's why I play Kano.
So you don't play you don't play the player anymore, right?
No, never.
I wonder why.
They just keep telling me they'll thank you.
It's like we looked at your resume and we'll
don't call us. We'll call you. We won't call you. We won't call you. So I do. I'm the type of player who wants my backstory weaved in to an arc, a main arc. I don't want it to be resolved in one session. And then you have like the shit end of the stick with some DMs. I had one DM who was like, I was more interested in my backstory. I'm like, I was a tabaxi in a city, but my parents were gone, and I learned about the tabaxi that all went south, and I'm like, this is really fucking cool. What happened to him? He's like, there's no written text. I'm like, shit, there's a fucking government conspiracy to cover everything up. And I was like, I know there's a kobold problem that you want us to take care of, but like, what about them tabaxis that went to the south though? So like, I tried to like go after. It's like, hey, I'm gonna take care of this problem, governor, mayor, lord, whatever. But can you do me a favor? Can you tell me more about these tabaxi? Oh, there's nothing to tell. They all went south.
See, but that is such an easy fix. You don't have clearance. Only C rank adventurers could get It's like, oh, okay, I got to rise in the ranks. For
make it a goal to work.
Goal.
Yeah, make it a goal to work.
Exactly.
But he was like, "Oh no, there's nothing to tell. They all just went south."
Lazy.
I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "But I'm really invested in this." And then one day, like, we're having downtime, and I get there's a knock at the front door of our wherever we're staying. Government official at the door is like, "I'm here to tell you that your parents' names were on the roster. They all went south. If you want to find them, they're perfectly fine and healthy, and they've contributed nothing to the Great War."
That's really that's like a.
I was like, as a player, all my enthusiasm from the game went out the window.
Yes.
I immediately did not want to play the game anymore. I was just a shell. I was just a shell.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, everything I wanted from this game, you just killed. And I want to go south to find my parents, but if I do that, now I can't play the game, or I have to come in as another character. Which is like, and that killed the game for me because I didn't have that conversation with the DM about like, what kind of game do you run? Not what campaign, and I emphasize this a lot, like, people want to know the campaign they're playing. It's like, is it Sea Pirates?
It's nothing to do with that.
That's not what it is. It's what kind of campaign do you run? Do you run a rules-heavy campaign? Do you run a loosey-goosey with the rules campaign? Do you let the players drive the story? Is it a sandbox? How do you treat what the players do? If the players try to do something that's not within the rules or they don't have a spell for, beat them. Yeah. Like, I think these are very important questions for players to ask DMs, and I'm guilty of not asking.
But I think the only way to really get an answer for that
have sex with them.
Do that, and right after you have sex with them,
yes, yeah.
do a one shot.
I love this idea of the one shot. Like, you just sit down and do a one shot with them.
4-hour session, and you can be as wild as or as taken back, but I think you get a true understanding of how they play when they're playing, because everyone says things that they don't understand themselves.
Yeah. We've had players tell us, I know how to play the game.
I'm a perfect player.
George is like, I know exactly how to...
Let's not name drop.
Hugo!
A player that we know, yes, is... because
I know so many Georges.
Yeah, no. But like people, they emphasize or they say things that they themselves are not knowing because communication is not easy.
Yeah.
Especially when, for players... They have no dedication. They didn't set realistic expectations.
Yeah.
What happens with the DM, with the D&D? They go, drop it, and they'll never be heard from again because they didn't communicate that, hey, DM, you're a bad DM, or I didn't expect this, or this is not what I wanted.
And there are objectively bad DMs that you shouldn't try to play with. And I'm not saying it facetiously. I'm just saying, like, there are DMs out there that I will tell you run and not even try to work it out. Like,
most of those DMs, I think are the for me, if it is DM versus player,
yeah,
I would go away. I would stay away only because the first session fine, second session fine, third session fine, fourth session fine. It's when you start. It's when the DM starts winning, and the player now has to win back, and now you're creating this competitive animosity where you guys aren't even really there to play with each other. You're there to play against each other.
Oh my god.
And now you both hate fucking going.
I think for me, the worst offender is like taking player agency. The idea of us playing this game is we're playing characters because we want to embody these characters and like we're fantasizing about being these people.
Yes.
When the DM takes that away from you, takes your...
Explain to me what do you mean?
So player agency is your ability to play in this world, like your ability to affect the world and make decisions.
Okay.
So when a DM goes, hey, I killed that player, but that player isn't here.
That's horrible.
That is dog shit.
That's horrible.
And it happened in a game I was playing where I was playing, the DM said I was talking to a demon. There was another player character there, but he had to leave. And so he was just being an NPC, or he was just there. And I was like, all right, well, just forget he's here and just deal with me. And the demon killed him. And I'm like, that's not cool. He's not even here to like roll like
defend himself, right? He just dies.
And the DM's like, yeah, no, he takes his body and he's dead. I'm like, that's
you're a piece of
dog shit.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by player agency.
I think that's an extreme.
And it's a very extreme example, but another example of player agency is when no matter what you did, it's the same result.
Yes.
That
But I think that goes to railroading. Because no matter what the players do, the story will always be the same.
yes.
That is, it feels terrible because
It
it's the second you feel as a player and you're doing all these cool things, you're thinking out of the box, you're doing different things, and the DM immediately goes, doesn't matter if the story is the same. What's the point of playing?
Yeah.
At that point, I'm watching a cutscene.
Yeah, I agree. And
Maybe there's quick time events, but it's still a cutscene.
it's still a cutscene. No, I agree with that 100%. And we'll talk more about railroading and linear and sandbox games in episode 4.
Episode 4 is the railroading.
Okay, episode 4 is the railroading. But I think we've talked on all the points that we wanted to make
For session 0.
for session 0.
What to expect, player expectations, dedication, priorities, life expectancy.
I that was where, like, don't be alarmed if your game doesn't last past session 3 or 4 or 5. Even with people who mesh well, people who are like, holy shit, this is like the tier group, and like you're all fucking all-stars.
Life will always happen.
Life will always happen, and 9 times out of 10 in this random statistic I just threw out, the games won't last.
I feel, however, that a D&D group that meets all of their expectations, player to DM, DM to player, realistic expectations, dedication, the chances for them to fail just because of life is significantly less
Oh yeah.
than when all the other things are red flags.
Oh yeah. And I think that is what the biggest killer for life expectancy is, all these other things.
Yes.
Your game has a 100% chance of not going past session 5 if you don't have realistic expectations, you don't know the DM and player styles, and the tone of the game, and all these priorities, all these other things aren't talked and discussed about. So, in closing, when you sit down for session 0, guys, talk to the other players and talk to the DM and ask questions about play styles. What is it? How do you resolve conflict? How is it that you give them a random scenario and be like, would you resolve this as a DM?
Yeah.
And see what they say.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with wanting a good game just because you don't want to make the DM feel bad.
Yeah, no, fuck that.
No. Like, it's your time, it's your effort.
Yeah.
You want what you put into the game to mean something.
Yeah.
And not just 4 sessions, 4 hours each of wasted time. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're doing nothing.
Where you would just rather stay at home and be in bed watching anime reruns.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I got better things to do. I'm gonna curl my dog's hair.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than that, because at that point you're at that level and everyone is feeling sour because it wasn't discussed about at the beginning.
Absolutely. So discuss it. Don't be afraid. And DMs also don't be afraid to look inwards and like see what it is you want from the game.
Yes.
I think that's super important that DMs don't really think about, is like, what do you want from this game? Some DMs want the players to be epic fucking fantasy heroes. Other DMs want the players to fucking follow their story and like learn about their world. I think it's important for player and DM to sit down and really go, what do I want from a game?
I agree.
And that will answer a lot of your questions for what you're looking for in players and DMs. So with that, I think we're gonna go finish our drink. And
I think I need another drink.
I still got mine. I was talking so much.
No,
I won't shut the
You don't
fuck
shut the
up.
fuck up.
With that, I think you can come and lounge with us next time on episode 2, which will be next Monday.
Yep.
Which we're going to cover. What are we going to cover next week? We come up with this as we end the lounge because it's so cash.
It's so cash.
So cash.
I think next week we should discuss about stories,
Stories.
creating a campaign.
Okay. Creating a campaign. Okay. We can talk about creating a campaign, what it's like to play in a campaign, and what the player expectations. We got this. We're going to come up with a lot of talking points. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us in our lounge,
Yes.
and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Ciao for now.
Ciao. Hey, grab me a drink while you're up.
Oh, you prissy bitch.
I know.